So last week we talked about oxidative stress. We talked about what it is. Basically, oxidative stress is when your body has more free radicals than you have the ability to neutralize those free radicals. And when you are living with sickle cell disease, your body is in a constant state of oxidative stress, just based on the process of having sickle cell. Your red blood cells breaking down, all those components that are in the red blood cell end up in the bloodstream, and those are considered free radicals. So how do you combat that? Your body is working so hard that there's not enough antioxidants produced by your body to neutralize those free radicals. So where do you get those antioxidants? You get them from food. Endari is one of the medications that was approved in 2017, and it is an antioxidant. It's L-glutamine, and it does the same thing in your body that an antioxidant would do. And we talked about eating whole foods. That's where you can get the bulk of your antioxidants. Next slide, please. So this is, I love this slide, right? How I was scouring the internet to find something that really kind of makes sense. But this is how an antioxidant works. So the green face is the antioxidant. The green face, the red face in the middle, is the free radical. And the purple face on the side, or violet face, is healthy tissue. So this is what happens. The free radical is out there. You see that little blank space up at the top of the circle on the free radical? I don't want to jar you and bring you back to science, but that's an electron. So don't even worry about it. It's a space that needs to be filled. Let's put it that way. It's a space that the free radical needs to fill. What does the free radical do? How does it fill that space? It goes to a healthy tissue cell and says, I'll take the substance I need from you. And then what happens? That what was a normal healthy cell now becomes exactly a damaged cell. That's how free radicals damage our bodies. It takes what it needs from our healthy cells. What does the antioxidant do? It says, hold up, I got something you need. I'm gonna give it to you. So it spares the healthy tissue by giving up that substance that free radical needs to not be a free radical. Now it's a bound radical. Antioxidants are our protectors. Does that make sense? I was hoping that this picture would make more sense than the one last week, because you can see that the free radical is missing something. And so what it misses, it takes from our healthy cells. So in order to talk about hypermetabolism, we need to talk about what metabolism is. Metabolism is the process that our bodies use to take food to make the energy that we need. BMR, you may have heard it, you may not, our basal metabolic rate. That's how much energy or how many calories we use just at rest. Just at rest. Okay. Next slide. So what happens is, hypermetabolism is when your body is working so hard, it's just constantly going. And that's the state that sickle cell folks are in all the time. They're in a hypermetabolic state. So it uses up energy more quickly than normal. Your normal body processes are using more energy than the average person. Your heart rate is higher because some are in a chronic anemic state. So when you're in a chronic anemic state, your heart rate is moving faster so that you can move that blood to the lungs to get oxygen faster, because you don't have a lot of healthy red blood cells. So when you don't have a lot of red blood cells, those red blood cells need to do double time. So how does it get circulated in the system faster? Your heart rate goes faster. Your red blood cell production is higher because the normal, I think we talked about this a couple sessions ago, the normal red blood cell lives to be 100 to 120 days. The sickle red blood cell only lives to max is 20, so it's 10 to 20 days. What happens in that time? If it only lives 10 to 20 days, that means your body has to produce more red blood cells. That means it needs more energy to produce more red blood cells. Hypermetabolism. Your metabolism is sped up because you need to produce red blood cells constantly, really. Protein turnover. So what happens? Your red blood cells are basically made up of protein molecules. So if you're constantly breaking down those protein molecules, you have to rebuild those protein molecules to make red blood cells. That's another metabolism where we're just constantly producing cells. And back to what we had talked about the second and the third week. Isn't it crazy how inflammation and oxidative stress can cause hypermetabolism? Because inflammation and oxidative stress cause tissue damage. And in order for those tissues to be repaired, our bodies have to work harder. And you're in a constant state of inflammation. It's called chronic inflammation. You're in a constant state of oxidative stress. So all these things are playing to rev up that metabolism to keep it going so you can rebuild. And so you're in a constant state of rebuild. So these are the symptoms. Tissue breakdown, we talked about why. We talked about weight loss because your body is using up that energy so quickly. And if you don't give it the energy that it needs, it's going to take energy from other cells. Fatigue, constantly working. Anemia, makes sense. Growth, so there's a growth and a delay in the onset of puberty because of this phenomenon. Your body is using so much energy to just basically get what it needs that there's no energy left to grow normal healthy cells. So, I like this slide. It looks really busy, but if you stay there with me, because this is the slide that basically sums up what we've been talking about for the last 4 weeks. So we're going to start in that upper left-hand corner, the PO2. That means the partial pressure of oxygen. Don't worry about that term. Just know that you see how the arrow's pointing down? Decreased oxygen, okay, in our sickle cells. So sickle cells are high, the oxygen in our blood is low. What happens? That's deoxygenated sickled cells. That means the oxygen has left that cell. And when it leaves that cell, it causes the cell to sickle. You learned that back in the first session. So stay with me. The cell went to the lungs, got oxygen, went to other parts of the body, released that oxygen, and just the sickled cell releasing the oxygen makes the cell fragile and causes it to sickle. What happens from that point? There's hemolysis. We talked about that. The fragility of the sickle cell breaking down. When it breaks down, that free hemoglobin now is in the system. So we have endothelial, just means the inside of the blood vessel. That's all it is. It's the lining inside the blood vessel. What happens to that lining? In response to that free hemoglobin, we have inflammation. In response to the cell breaking down, we have oxidative stress. And it causes all those things. So if we go to vascular stasis, we'll come back to discuss the systemic endothelial dysfunction. All it means is that the inside of the blood vessel isn't working right. That's all that means. So let's go from sickling to vascular stasis. All vascular stasis means is blood is not flowing through those blood vessels because the sickle cell have now formed a dam and the blood can't flow through. That's what causes the pain crisis. Remember, we talked about that. Because the blood is not flowing to those particular areas. Where blood doesn't flow, oxygen doesn't get to. So what happens? It's some form of cell death. Okay? So we look at venous stasis, we go down to vascular occlusion. That's what we just described, basal occlusion. What happens? Infarction. What does infarction mean? All that means is blood oxygen didn't get to that area and the area is starting to die. That's all that means. So then you look at the circle. We talked about ischemia reperfusion injury. We talked about that 2 sessions ago. What is that? That is when there's no blood flowing to the area, okay? Then all of a sudden blood and oxygen flows to that area. It rushes to the area, it over-oxygenates the area, and that causes injury. Isn't it crazy? Too much, too little can cause injuries. So, we look at that circle, systemic inflammation. That's what we've been talking about. So we talked about 2 weeks ago. So you can see that particular pathway is systemic inflammation. The other pathway, the hemolysis, is another pathway because there's that free heme, that intracellular components are now out of the cell. So what was in the cell, when it broke, is now out of the cell and it's causing problems. So, and these are all the problems we see. So inflammation, free heme, oxidant generation. What did we just say? Oxidative stress. So we have adhesion molecules. That's the response of the inside of the lining. Basically, all the helper cells, supposed to help, come to that area to help heal it. But there's so many of them that it causes all those molecules come together and start to form clots, basically. We have reduced nitric oxide bioavailability. What does that mean? All that means is because of this free heme antioxidants bind to the nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is what you need, you learned last week, to dilate blood vessels. So if you don't have that in your system, your blood vessels are not dilating. So when you consider blood vessels not dilating, plus you have this basal occlusion, plus you have these adhesion molecules, you can understand why blood is not flowing to that area, because the blood vessel is not large enough and there's other obstacles in the way. Microparticles are the free heme. Vascular instability, we talked about the inside of those blood cells now being irritated. Growth factors are increased, which increases all of our body processes. Permeability, now our blood vessels are more permeable and things that should be in the blood vessel are now oozing into other areas. We talked about coagulant activation, which is what we just talked about, platelet. So coagulant activation and platelet activation are part of that whole process of helping to relieve that injury to that blood vessel. Vasculopathy just means that there's disease of the blood vessel, which is caused by all of this. And then organ damage. So when we talked about the first week, every place blood flows, sickle cell can affect. So when we talk about remote organ damage, we're talking about all of our systems can be damaged by sickle cell. Is there any intracellular substance that can break this chain? Because the reason why I say in sickle cell no is because the cells are constantly breaking down. So the cycle is just continuing and repeating itself. If they had what they needed, then this process would not take place. But that's an excellent question.
Once it starts.
Because sickle cell is from birth.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing,
Mm-hmm.
there's no, you don't catch it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't, it's, you're born with it. It's a genetic disease, you're born with it. So if there's a way that they could, and hopefully they're getting to that point, where they can test you in vitro, in vivo, the embryonic testing,
Yeah.
so that they would know and could do something about that genetic component then you could say you could be born without it. But would you still have the sickle gene? You'd still have the gene, but it would express itself. So I wanted to bring all of this that we've learned back to this. Nutrition complications of sickle cell disease. So this encompasses all that we've talked about. We talked about increased energy expenditure. We talked about that today. Increased protein turnover, which goes along with the increased energy expenditure. Vitamin D deficiency. It is so important because they've done studies with vitamin D deficiency and pain. So that's one of the studies that they've done. But African Americans or people with darker skin, we don't get as much sun. And in these days and times, you're told to stay out of the sun unless you put on sunscreen and that whole now. And being out in the sun can be dehydrating, so you really don't necessarily go out into the sun a lot. So when you're in a hypermetabolic state, you use a lot of vitamin D. So you need that supplement. Sickle cell was discovered in the West, in the United States, in 1910. And how it was discovered, this is number 2 minutes. How it was discovered is a young man from Grenada, Ireland, came to study dentistry in Chicago. So during his trip from Grenada to New York, number one, it was a boat ride, so that took a while for him to get here. And once he got to New York, it was cold. He was sick. He went to whatever care place was in New York. They got him right, and he came on to Chicago. Chicago was cold. Because in fact, he went to what is now UIC's dental school. No, actually, it was UIC dental school. But he was seen by a physician, a resident, at what is now Rush. The resident took a sample of his blood and noticed, oh my God, what are these sickle little shaped things? He told his attending physician. They researched him, helped him basically stay his 3 years here, constantly needing care because it was cold here. And that's one of the things when you read the man's bio, that's what he says. This weather here was nothing like the weather in Grenada. Mm-hmm. And see, people in Grenada, since they're people of color, they were from Africa, they knew about sickle cell, but it didn't have a name. They called it something totally different. But coming here is where sickle cell, because at first they were going to call it Herod's disease, which is the doctor who developed it. And somebody was like, yeah, we're going to call it sickle cell because that's what it looks like under the microscope. Mm-hmm. So just that change going from there to here caused him a lot of problems. So increased cardiovascular disease risk, because we talked about the damage it does to the blood vessels, and also it can cause something called pulmonary hypertension, which is really putting stress on the heart because the heart is constantly working. Amino acid deficiency goes along with protein turnover. Proteins are, amino acids are proteins, basically. And because there's such a breakdown of that tissue, you have an amino acid deficiency. Increased dehydration. What is our thing? Hydrate. Because the body's working very hard. Increased bone turnover, because we do get some of our minerals from bone. If we're not taking in enough minerals, our bones break down, and we're using those minerals to basically help support other aspects of our body functions. So it's a constant cycle. That's why you're in this class. It's a constant cycle. You're in the class to figure out what can I insert in this. Okay? Next slide. Recap. Genetic disease, not just one. Complications, we talked about inflammation, oxidative stress, and hypermetabolism. The process is cyclic, and that's what the slide showed you, the slide just before this. It's cyclic. The 2 slides before that showed you all of this stuff just happens together. It's not just one or the other. This influences this, which influences this. It's a cycle, and we're trying to break the cycle. Eat the rainbow.
Yes.
That's why you're here. Eat the rainbow. And what's the last one?
Hydrate.
I appreciate you guys. This has been